Hello, everybody. I just got roused on by someone for saying hello, everybody, very fast in my intros. Apparently, I do it like hello, everybody, that you can't understand me, and I probably do. But this is a John Murphy ex listener. It is, yeah. Sorry, this is a John Murphy ex listener. John Murphy is from the series The 100. Suggest watching it. It's great. He has become one of my biggest comfort characters very fast. So this video is for me. I'm selfish. I'm kidding. But there are some trigger warnings in this. This contains blood, graphic description of injury, and swearing. So if any of that triggers you, please leave and watch one of my other videos. I hope you enjoy. You were sitting down, meats dangling above you, the fire blazing, in the makeshift human-sized oven you had all made. Hey, listener. You looked up, recognizing the voice. Oh, hey, John. Murphy grinned. So, you're stuck on oven duty, huh? What'd you do to get here? He asked jokingly. It's just I'm not very good at the whole hunting or fighting thing, so Bellemere suggested this. John nodded, hitting a piece of meat dangling from the ceiling above him. Well, I gotta go and hunt. I'll talk later. You nodded, waving him goodbye. Confusion in your face. John Murphy never really talked to you. You finally got done with the meat. Leaving, walking outside, you stretched your arms up, smiling and sighing, a breath of relief that you were finally done. Hey, listen up. You heard your name getting yelled. Turning your head, slightly panicked, you saw John jogging up to you. You relaxed, smiling at him. What's up, John? Oh, it's just I made this for you, is all. His hand dug into his left pocket. Oh, bitch. His hand dug into his left pocket before he froze, looking panicked. He opened his pocket in order to look into it as he started patting his body, slightly frantic, giving you an awkward smile. Before he finally put his hand in his right pocket, once again freezing as his face went red. He pulled it out, grabbing your hand and putting the thing gently in it. Looking at it, you saw it was a handmade metal knife. And on closer inspection, it had your initials carved into the side. I know you don't fight, but better safe than sorry, eh? You smiled, gripping the knife. Thank you, John. I love it. Smiling at him, his cheeks heated up more as his ears went red. He smiled back, putting up awkward finger guns and running away, tripping in the process. You woke up early. Leaving your tent, you were caught slightly off guard by the unknown bright colours in front of you. You looked around, seeing everyone was still asleep. As you picked up the flowers, smiling, there was no note, but the ribbon that was holding them had your initials written on it. You put it next to your sleeping bag. Seeing the knife, you picked it up, looking at it once again. You looked at the initials carved into it and recognized the handwriting. Picking up the ribbon, you looked at it. Your face started to heat up as you noted that they were the same. John Murphy, huh? You were put on your first proper hunting mission. Ironically, it was with none other than John Murphy. He kept going overboard, so you were basically his babysitter. You were walking for a bit before you both heard a rustle in the bushes. Hiding behind a tree, John shushed you as a boar walked out. John, creeping behind it, he threw a spear, it hitting bullseye. You smiled, throwing your hands up and cheering. John walks over to the boar, then looks at you, smiling as you blush slightly, looking away. Let's get back. John chuckled, nodding as he started to drag the pig. After a bit of walking, you started to feel bad. You turned your body, still walking, this time backwards, facing him. He gave you a confused look. I can help carry it if you— What? Yeah, you fell into a bush. John's jaw dropped before he bursted out into laughter, bending over, clutching his stomach. You sat there for a second, trying to contain the fact that your life flashed before your eyes, as Murphy also finally contained himself. He walked over to you. Standing over the bush, it looked like he was sitting in a big, squishy beanbag. He put his hand out, to which you happily took it. He helped you up as you brushed yourself off. You heard Murphy chuckle a little. Looking back up at him, he reached out, picking a stray leaf from your hair, his hand lingering as he smiled. He stepped back, his face flushing, picking up the pig and starting to walk once again. Gotta be careful if you don't know the terrain. Murphy disappeared into the ground. Murphy disappeared as you yelled, running over to him. He had fallen into a hole, a pretty deep hole. It was silent for a minute before you couldn't contain yourself any longer and you bursted out into a fit of laughter. John just stared at you, unimpressed. Eventually, you calmed down, helping John up. That was when you two realized he had taken the pig down there with him. Now what do we do? At first, John was determined to get it out on his own. When that obviously didn't work, you tried together, also failing miserably. John, defeated, walked back to camp, which was an embarrassingly short walk, as you waited, him coming back with a laughing Bellemere. He looked in the hole smiling, shaking his head. All he said was a simple, "How?" It wasn't fully dead. Made a run for it. Your eyes widened as they shot up to Murphy, jaw dropped. You and him made eye contact, him shushing you with his eyes. Covering your mouth to prevent yourself from laughing, Bellemere, you, and John eventually got the pig out, bringing it to camp. Once Bellemere was out of earshot, you looked at Murphy. He looked back at you. What did you want me to say? Oh, maybe, Bellemere, I'm clumsy and I fell into a hole because I was too busy being an ass to focus on my surroundings. You looked at him, smirking as he rolled his eyes, fighting back a smile. You both went your separate ways for the rest of the day.
That night, you normally don't have trouble sleeping, but tonight, for some reason you did. You exited your tent, seeing a very of bodies scattered all over the place. People were piled into tents, people in trees, some even just laid down and went to sleep on the floor. You did share a tent with Octavia and sometimes Raven, but Octavia normally slept in the dropship and Raven would fall asleep in her work tent mainly. So you had it all to yourself. You didn't know why people didn't immediately steal your tent. You were definitely easy to do so, but you didn't really care. You walked to the edge of the camp where the watch was. Sitting down, you decided to make yourself useful and keep watch as well. You found a log, sitting down on it, looking into the quiet woods, the only sound being the wind. You felt something hit you. You turned, annoyed. You didn't see anyone. Looking down, you saw a small metal cat on the side of you. Looking around, you picked it up, inspecting the shaggy carving job. Turning your eye, Turning it, your eye caught a familiar handwriting of your initials. You looked fast, trying to see if you could see him, but he was nowhere to be found. Sighing, you slumped, slightly disappointed, before smiling at the little cat. Soon, heading back to your tent. That night you had gotten some rope. With your knife, you spent most of the time trying to make a hole in the cat. Eventually succeeding, you thread the rope through and tied it around your neck, smiling while the weight hung over your chest. The next morning, you were woken up by the sound of yelling. Shooting up, you almost threw yourself out of your tent, finding a small crowd of people gathered around. Bellemere yelling that was enough. You ran to the crowd, seeing Jasper and running up to him. What's going on? Jasper jumped slightly. You seemed to have startled him, but relaxed quickly after noticing it was you. He put his arm around your neck, pulling you closer to him so you could hear him over all the screaming. Murphy is beating the shit out of a guy. He said something about some girl and you got pissed. Your eyes shot wide as you smiled a thank you to him, pushing through the crowd. Your eyes widened even more to the scene in front of you. John was on top of the boy, punching him continuously, as Bellemere and a few others tried to pull him off. He had a busted lip and was bleeding from the head and nose. Finally, after a lot of yelling and pulling, John was off the boy, him groaning in pain on the ground. "Murphy, take a walk. Go to med," Bellemere demanded, pushing Murphy away. He turned, ending up face to face with you, his cheeks flushed as he straightened up, the worry on your face making him feel slightly guilty. Grabbing the hand that wasn't covered in blood and cuts, you dragged him to the dropship, climbing up the ladder to the makeshift medbay. He sat down, keeping his eyes focused on the floor. Grabbing the bandages, you knelt down in front of him, gently grabbing his hand as he flinched back slightly. "It's okay. You're okay," you comforted, your eyes meeting his as they softened. Gently, you washed the blood and put bandages on his hands, soon moving to his face. Grabbing the cloth, you started gently wiping his lip. He winced back in pain, slightly hissing, as you apologized, continuing until someone dragged in the guy John was beating up. You gave John the cloth to continue cleaning the blood as you rushed over to the other boy. He was responsive but barely, just making little grunts and groans. John had hit him in the head so many times you were scared he had a concussion. Cleaning the blood and wounds, he finally came to, twisting and turning, as you tried to bandage up his head. When he saw you, he started to panic, pushing back as you tried to calm him down. He was screaming sorry and that he didn't mean it. You looked at John, who looked more annoyed than worried. You tried to calm him down, getting closer, telling him to stop moving because of his head. He didn't listen. The group of people downstairs, Bellemere, Clark, Finn, Jasper, and Octavia, heard what was happening and ran upstairs, pushing the latch. Immediately, Finn and Bellemere held him still, trying to calm him down. You leant forward, picking up the bandages you had dropped, attempting, once again, to bandage him. He seemed to be calm for a second before freaking out again, flailing his legs and kicking you right in the face. You fell back, grabbing your nose. Jasper and John screamed, both of them by your side in no time. Jasper seemed to be confused by John being so worried, but he stopped quickly when he heard you groan. You took your hand away from your face, showing blood, and a lot of it. You leant on your hands and knees, holding your hand to your face as the guy started apologizing. John shot him a glare, making him shut up. Looking back at you is when he saw it. The silver metal cat hanging around your neck. His heart swelled as he smiled at it. Later that day, you hadn't gotten too hurt. Your nose bled a lot and made you slightly dizzy, but no permanent damage. Murphy had a cut on his lip and a few scratches, but other than that, he was fine. You couldn't say the same about the other guy, though. John had ended up hitting him so many times that he broke his nose twice, busted his cheek, gave him 2 black eyes, and ended up making him lose a tooth. Everyone seemed to steer clear from John after that, watching their tongue. You don't know who he was talking about to make John heavily hurt him like that. That night, you were in your tent. The flowers that were given to you days prior had sadly wilted pretty quickly, but you still had the ribbon. Playing with your cat necklace, you drew in your book. You were lucky enough to find an empty journal, and no one seemed to care what you did with it, so you used it to draw, with the pencils Finn had snatched from the craft shop. What used to be the craft shop. You were getting bored. It had been nearly a month since you ended, and you have been inside the camp for half the time. It was much like the Ark, but you couldn't sneak out. It wasn't an option here. You would die for sure. The only time you had been out was going hunting with Murphy. You don't know exactly why you were picked, but you smiled back at the thought of his laugh.